$4,046,579 and very little cents is what it cost to make one of the most universally hated Kickstarted video games in history. Mighty Number 9 released in 2016 as a spiritual successor to the classic Mega Man series, years before we had an actual successor to the Capcom franchise. And it's still widely considered to be an insult to the legacy of the true blue bomber, a complete failing of what made the game so good to begin with. I mean, just look at the reviews. They're scathing at generally average to mediocre. I mean, these aren't good scores to clock in at, don't get me wrong, but I thought the whole world was in agreement that this game was a bright orange dumpster fire. And looking at Metacritic's user scores, that seems to be the consensus. But the journalists thought differently. Is this another case of gaming media being bought out by Big Gamer to sell gambling to minors, or whatever the hell Reddit's on about this week? Or was Mighty Number 9 not as bad as we thought? Now, obviously, I'm striking while the iron is hot on this one, talking about the Blue Bomb nearly 3 years after its release. But inspiration struck me while I was watching my friend play Mega Man 11, a first-party revamp of the series. I love this new entry, and the general consensus from players has been extremely positive. After all, people love Mega Man, but it's not flawless, and some common complaints include the level design being shoddy, the graphics feeling a bit cheap, the music being forgettable, crummy voice acting, poor difficulty scaling. Does any of this sound familiar? These are all of the same complaints that fans bashed Mighty Number 9 for. And yet Mega Man 11 is hailed as another instant classic, so what was the problem? Was it Mighty's developers? Maybe they simply weren't up to the task. After all, how could you expect Keiji Inafune's company Concept, partner with Inti Creates, to understand Mega Man? Their track record only has them producing and developing Mega Man 8, 9, 10, Legends, X4 and 5, and the entire Zero series. They didn't make 2 though, and that's the only one that matters. So a collection of Mega Man's legacy charged with making a game in a similar fashion failed to fire on all cylinders? That just doesn't seem possible to me. Well, there's only one way to find out, because I'm not gonna sit here and complain about a game I've never played before after all. Let's give it a go. Okay, yeah, it ain't good though. Going into the game with an open mind, setting aside any preconceived notions of quality or lack thereof, it still proves itself to be the epitome of mediocre at best. Right out the gate, low quality textures and graphics in general show through. This game really doesn't look like it's from 2016, let alone worth over $4 million. And even just walking around, the controls feel stiff, simple platforming feels uncomfortable, and it's not helped by a weird tripping animation when holding forward upon hitting the ground. I still can't tell if this is purely cosmetic or not, but I could swear it got me killed by knocking me off a platform once or twice. Everything just feels, well, like a cheap copy of Mega Man. For those of you not familiar with Mega Man, well, first of all, you made an interesting decision watching this video, and secondly, I'll explain the general game mechanics. You walk and jump through 2D side-scrolling levels, firing your buster to defeat enemies, avoiding instant death pits and spikes until you get to the end of the level where you face a boss. After beating that boss, you earn their weapon, which can be used in lieu of your buster to more creatively or efficiently tackle obstacles. Mighty Number 9 takes this one step further. Instead of only acquiring upgrades from bosses, you can acquire them from common enemies as well via the dash technique. This is a simple dash with no limit, boosting you forward and through heavily damaged foes, finishing them off. The entire game is designed around this mechanic, which proves irritating as the dash feels so clunky. You would think a power slide forward that could be used in the air with no limit would be nothing but a good thing, but the outright necessary mechanic of dashing into enemies quickly turns chaotic against hordes of mooks. If a single enemy in a swarm is not lit up, then you'll damage yourself in an attempt to clear away enemies you've already weakened. And while foes can technically be fully finished off on blasts alone, it takes so goddamn long. At least 5 times as long as simply popping them once or twice and dashing through them. This game is designed around comboing enemy after enemy, going from shots to dash to shots to dash, so on and so forth. But the levels aren't designed around that, and the game lags if you combo too many enemies in a row. I genuinely can't tell if this is supposed to be a sort of hit stun to make attacks feel more powerful, or the engine not keeping up with the high octane action of moving forward slightly. But either way, it really throws off your rhythm, and it doesn't get any better when faced with a lone enemy. When you deal damage to a boss, they will eventually glow pink as a sign of being weakened enough to dash through. The problem is, after dashing into them, you're now inside of the enemy and have to awkwardly dash or walk out immediately to avoid taking contact damage. damage. And if you don't do this whole process quickly enough, all the damage you dealt to the boss will simply be healed off. It just feels unintuitive to actively charge at your enemy and clip inside of them to make progress. On singular common mobs, this is a non-issue and even rewards you with a temporary upgrade. However, these range from nice but useless like minor firepower upgrades to theoretically good but actually detrimental like speed boosts. While a faster walk speed sounds handy, in a precision platformer like this, having sudden borderline random increases and decreases in your movement speed can be deadly. Which brings me back to my other issues with the dash. The precision of Mega Man's level design does not mesh well with the sloppy, downright inconsistent distance achieved via dashing. This discomfort is amplified by the ledge grabbing mechanic, not unlike ledges in Smash Bros. However, some ledges can't be grabbed and others will make you grab them even if you don't want to. When these jank mechanics are expected to be used in tandem for life or death platforming, I can't help but feel frustrated. They almost feel like features just for the sake of features, to try and distance Mighty No. 9 from obvious comparisons to Mega Man, and we'll touch on that more later. But hey, this game does have an advantage over Mega Man, a stellar voice cast. While the Blue Bombers series occasionally attributed voices to its lovable characters, the best they ever got was average in Mega Man 11, and at the worst of times,
Good luck, Mega Man!
Meanwhile, in Mighty No. 9, you have talents like Yuri Lowenthal, Matthew Mercer, and Steve Bloom lining the roster, all actors with credited history. But with the exception of Dead Horse Bebop over here, not a single actor or actress brings a good performance, and it seems to be based entirely in a lack of direction. The cast simply wasn't told what to do well enough, so they either were deadpan throughout, or worse, improvising.
Sunday, what happened to the lights? I'm scared. Mommy!
And the acting would be a non-issue as well if it wasn't for the interruptions. Why do you have voice lines for killing enemies in a combo-based game? Anyways, the story for Mr. No. 9 here is a beat-for-call ripoff of the Robo-Enza plot used in Mega Man 10, with the so-called mighty numbers going crazy due to a virus in their circuitry. It's up to you to snap all of your friends out of their frenzies, yada yada. Honestly, the plots of Mega Man games were never their draw, and this game doesn't do any better making me feel invested. But it does try by having Dr. Right and Dr. Wrong here mumble something to each other about computers and people constantly talking at you in levels, which gets rather annoying when you're dying to the same BS jumps over and over, keep respawning at checkpoints, only to hear their voice lines playing over and over and over. That's another point worth touching on. Mega Man has always been brutally difficult, and has had its fair share of challenging sequences and absurd jumps. However, one thing it was always good about was introducing you to all of the puzzle pieces that make up an obstacle before throwing you into it. For instance, the first time you're presented with Yoku blocks, those obnoxious disappearing blocks they like so much, it's typically in a very low-risk environment, usually over a flat floor or at worst a single minor enemy. This way you can learn the ins and outs of the mechanic before it ups the difficulty down the line, and if it proves too much, you often have methods of bypassing or easing the challenge through items like Rush Jet and Spike Guard, or even game mechanics like using mercy frames from enemy damage to give a moment of immunity to instant death spikes. Mighty No. 9 ain't got any of that. No Rush Jet, no Spike Guard, and mercy frames don't make you immune to instant death, and this may be considered a good thing to some and an increase in challenge, as it were, if it was presented well. Nearly every level in Mighty No. 9 feels like a bad Mario Maker stage. Spikes and instant death traps are just thrown about willy-nilly without any warning or build-up. New mechanics that can one-hit kill you will present themselves with no warning or explanation, the very definition of a beginner trap. For instance, there's a level where you play as Call, who plays a lot like Beat, except she can't dash through enemies, despite enemy health not scaling to account for this, making everything take well over 10 shots to kill. The entire level is a maze where you're to locate keycards to unlock doors and progress. And then, right at the end, they throw what I can only describe as a horizontal wily fall at you. A tiny corridor of instant death spikes on every side, which you have to cautiously hover and dash through. It comes out of nowhere with no build-up, and death means we're playing a considerable part of the stage again. A portion, I might add, that once became completely unplayable for me by spawning a platform too high up for me to reach, forcing me to kill myself and try again. This happens throughout the entire game in every level. Sudden, intense difficulty increases out of nowhere, often featuring mechanics the game hasn't taught you yet or expects you to understand just by looking at them. And the game might have a case for that, seeing as all instant death traps have a pink aura indicating their lethal nature, except for when they don't. Look, I'm being incredibly harsh here, deservedly, mind you, but I'm someone who tries to take the good from the bad when I can, so let me talk about an addition I actually enjoyed for a change. After completing a stage by beating a robot Mighty Number, instead of simply just adding their weapon to your arsenal, you also recruit them as an ally. In every stage, a Mighty Number, provided you've rescued them, will appear to defeat enemies, destroy obstacles, and otherwise simply aid you in your fight. This is both adorable and innovative. It makes the characters feel like more than just enemies to be eliminated or weapons to be acquired. But speaking of, the weapon switch system sucks. So in older Mega Man games, you would have to pause the game to switch weapons. It would also pause the action, so it wasn't a big deal, but it made quickly switching back and forth between abilities a bit of a hassle. In Mega Man 10, a game designed by the co-developers of Mighty Number 9, mind you, they added buttons to swap back and forth between weapons on the fly while still allowing you to switch simply by pausing. And Mega Man 11 took this one step further, offering a full weapon wheel on the right joystick. These are good additions and the right way to do a spiritual successor. Take what worked in the past and add onto it with modern conveniences and innovations. Mighty Number 9 had a different idea. So to switch weapons, you use the left bumper and trigger to scroll back and forth through a menu and press Y to select a weapon. Then press Y again to swap back and forth between your buster and whichever weapon you choose. Sort of like a last weapon used key in some PC shooters. Makes sense to me, but Mighty Number 9 levels are very much based around the use of multiple weapons in succession. Some enemies are at angles that the buster can't hit, but other weapons can, and some jumps require a height boost from the helicopter blade power whatchamacallit. However, the weapon switching menu takes a bit too long to be able to quickly toggle between multiple powers. Not a problem, right? You can simply pause and nope! For whatever reason, they removed the ability to change powers on the pause screen. Instead, they added hotkeys for different weapons. So get this, Y is your last weapon used, right? And you can bind B, clicking the right stick and clicking the left stick to 3 other weapons. So you have half your weapon loadout spread across the entire controller, with the right stick continuing to go unused, by the way, because weapon wheels obviously haven't been invented yet, and the only way to switch back to the buster from a weapon you switch to is by pressing Y twice. It's better than nothing, but clunky and awful nonetheless. The only time in the game I was even remotely thankful for this feature is the stupid fucking final boss. You remember the yellow devil in Mega Man? It's like that, but in order to deal damage, you have to walk inside of it. And it has attacks that raise random platforms across the arena as the only way to avoid them, and if you don't guess where these platforms are, you're guaranteed to take damage. Thankfully, the sword power makes you invincible for some reason, so you can mash attack the entire fight to get by until the second phase with even more BS screen wiping, borderline unavoidable attacks. Now you need ice to slow it down, bombs to damage it. Listen, I know these weapons have names, but give me a fucking break, I can't be bothered. And the helicopter to jump over it. And the only way to confirm dealt damage is to dash through the boss, who will phase through the wall and go off screen to heal. This boss wouldn't be such an issue if your healing items, Excel Recover, they're just E-tanks, who gives a shit, were more consistently acquirable, but there's no shop, something that Mega Man 9 and 10 had, to buy items. Instead, you gain one healing item after killing enough enemies and the other as a random drop, and you don't keep the items if you die. So every time you're killed, you have to pray to get a healing item from Eddie Prince Jr. here, or else you'll just die again and again and again. This isn't fun. Mega Man games were fun because the challenge was intense but accomplishable. Even when you died, you learned a little more about what you had to do, and in later games would build up E-Tank's lives and rush abilities to make your life easier. And this is not me saying that Mighty Number 9 has to be exactly the same game as classic Mega Man. After all, Mega Man 11 added the entirety of the gear system in a mostly non-intrusive but rather innovative way. You can make changes. All I'm saying is if you take out features that improve gameplay, add clunky, pointless mechanics, and are simultaneously trying to be your own hip and happening thing while keeping yourself tied down to Mega Man with all these callbacks and achievements titled Super Fighting Robot, you're keeping the door wide open for all these comparisons. Looking at Mighty Number 9 as a standalone product without any consideration to Mega Man's existence, it feels like a cheap Saturday morning cartoon tie-in game with no style or soul, an absurd difficulty curve, and non-existent budget. But widening the scope to encompass content context of the Kickstarter, development team, and the games of old it's trying to emulate, Mighty No. 9 becomes so disappointing. So maybe that's why the critics weren't as harsh as the fans were. Most of the intense hatred for this game comes from what it represents. Let's step outside of the bounds of the game itself for a moment and discuss the situation that brewed around it. $4 million raised on Kickstarter to have multiple delays of the release of a glitchy, downright ugly product. Many backers were given broken game keys in their rewards, and there were multiple reports of the Wii U version outright crashing the system, something that should be totally unacceptable for a modern game release. The physical rewards weren't so great either, with the boxed version being mismatched cheap cardboard with no actual disc. The promised 3DS port of the game never saw the light of day, and topping off this entire clusterfuck, the thing that makes me weep for this game
Like an anime fan on prom night.
was the marketing. Not only did the trailers for this game do nothing but showcase how cheap and emotionless it looks, but it treated its consumer base like out-of-touch brands treated teenagers in the year 2000 and never.
Do you like awesome things that are awesome? There's probably a dash that makes you breakfast. I don't know. I know you like that combo on combo action. You'll be calling it, "Why are you doing this to me?" Bring it.
Was this ironic? Was it ironically ironic? Was it so not ironic that it becomes it doesn't matter whether or not it's ironic. It's painful, unfunny, and obnoxious regardless. Poor marketing can absolutely destroy a game's sales regardless of the quality of the product. Earthbound, for instance, while a spectacular game, barely sold copies on release due to its marketing focusing too hard on gross-out humor rather than the existential surrealist comedy and innovative gameplay. Mighty No. 9's marketing didn't really feel like it knew what to do. After all, the Kickstarter and devs were selling this hard as a spiritual successor to Mega Man, but your trailers can't exactly just say, "It's like Mega Man," without Capcom suddenly remembering to have brand integrity and sending a swarm of lawyers. As a result, the best they could come up with was
Team up or face off against your friends, or strangers, or even that weird dude who lives down the street whose name is probably Vernon, or some other creepy thing.
What just happened?
Sorry, got lost there.
And if there was anyone willing to give this game a shot despite outward appearances and mediocre reviews, that may have been enough to turn them away. So let's circle back to the title of this video. Is Mighty No. 9 as a video game really as bad as we remember it? Honestly, it's terrible, but it's not as inexcusably atrocious as I expected it to be. There are some good ideas, like many of the weapons having secondary functions, the bosses helping you tackle stages after completing them, and some levels and boss fights like the radio tower and counter shade proving creative and entertaining enough to justify the $4 I spent on this game. It's still not good, but it had enjoyable moments, kind of like a mediocre Mega Man ROM hack. Personally, if you want a modern, updated take on the genre of platformer, just stick with Mega Man 11. It just looks, feels, sounds, and plays better in, well, every possible way. Mighty No. 9, while maybe worth a few laughs and a handful of interesting ideas for fans of the old games, just fails to deliver too often to be worth anything more than pocket change. However, what makes this game so viscerally upsetting in my, and I'm sure many others' heads, was the presentation, marketing, the clumsy launch, and knowing these devs got it right in the past. $4 million and not a single penny showing any sign of being spent on good music, voice acting, graphics, or PR. All we're left with is a soulless knockoff of a beloved franchise, and with that series having gotten back on its feet, Mighty No. 9 will forever be remembered as an awful thing that's awful. Whoa! I hope you enjoyed my, well, it was more of a rant than it was an analysis. If you want to see my full playthrough of this game, the VODs to my Twitch streams are linked below. And while you're there, maybe give me a follow if you want. And while you're here, you could subscribe. Either way, thanks for watching, have a good day, and take it easy.